At least 27. The time is 6 p.m. We'll be getting started in just a moment. Welcome to Broadway United Methodist Church. I am the Reverend Dr. Shonda Nicole Gladden, one of the two pastors here. All of you who are in the audience are so welcome. Those of you joining us online, we'll be getting started in about 5 minutes. So go ahead and get comfortable, and thank you for being here. If you're in person, the restrooms are to my right and to my left up these stairs. If you prefer to go that way, there's a restroom to the rear, to my left, also to your right. Please be comfortable, be present. Feel like this is home because it is your home. We may be a church, but we are not that kind of church. This is a community space, and this is a space where you are welcome. We'll see you to get it started in just a few moments. Good evening again. Welcome again to Broadway United Methodist Church. This event, American Requiem, Project 2025 in the Black community, is hosted in partnership with the Center for Religion, Arts, and Culture here at Broadway United Methodist Church. Allow me to share just a little bit about the center and some of the upcoming events that you may want to also be considerate of just before I introduce your host, who will begin to get the program started. The Center for Religion, Arts, and Culture exists to cultivate creative self-actualization and freedom while holding space for critical exploration of the ways that religion, art, and culture shape our civic and communal pursuits. To this end, we partner with many different organizations and individuals throughout the city of Indianapolis to really amplify emerging voices and individuals who may or may not have a communal or congregational affiliation, who want to host events, who want to put forth creative programming. And so if that sounds like you, feel free to connect with us. We're on all of the socials as the Center for Religion, Arts, and Culture, and Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I don't think we have a Snapchat. Do the kids still do that? I'm showing my age. But certainly you are invited to be connected with us in that way. Tonight's program is spearheaded by a phenomenal young lady who will be introduced in just a moment. And so I won't steal the fire or the thunder of your host. But then if you're just not tired of being in this space, you're invited to come out tomorrow at 5 p.m. Where we will host the Civic Action Learning and Leadership Fellowship Showcase. We've had about 20 emerging adults, college students who've been sojourning with us over the summer by being embedded into a number of different organizations in the community to really study what does it mean to be civically engaged for global impact. And so that will begin at 5 p.m. Light refreshments will be provided and it will be right here in this exact same space. It won't be live stream though. So if you're joining us online tonight, don't expect that tomorrow. We need to see your face in the place, and we hope that you will indeed accept our invitation accordingly. Again, we have several things that you can be considerate of. If you'll just visit the website, broadwayumc.org, and you can learn more about the center there. You can also learn more about the ministries and opportunities to be connected here as well. At this time, I want to introduce your host for the evening, Ms. Tiara Bush, who will carry us through with the balance of the program. Let's give it up for Ms. Tiara.
Good evening and welcome to American Requiem, Project 2025 and Black America. The purpose of this event is to discuss the significance of Project 2025 and its impact on the Black community. In discussing the project, we'll highlight the timeline of events that led to the project and its implications for our future. We will also discuss the Black vote and how we can mobilize to prevent further harm from dangerous policies and practices. For some background on the organizations behind the project, we'll start with the Heritage Foundation. It is an organization dedicated to promoting conservative values in America. It's been around since 1973 and gained notoriety during the Reagan administration. Some of their most influential moments are their stance against CRT, promoting false claims regarding election fraud, and reducing the size of the government, among others. Next, we have the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, formerly known as the Conservative Caucus of State Legislators. It has a history of opposing labor unions, gun control, and placing more restrictions on voting. Like the Heritage Foundation, they were founded in 1973. Last, we have the Joshua Generation, also known as Gen J. It is an American Christian fundamentalist youth organization founded in 2004. It encourages youth participation in government, civics, and politics toward conservative Christian values. It is important to note that the structures of these conservative organizations have been present and active, intentionally blocking the upward mobility of marginalized communities for more than 50 years. From being against the Affordable Care Act to stripping the Voting Rights Act, one or more of these organizations has been at the forefront. To carry us on through our discussion with our panelists, I would like to turn the floor over to tonight's moderator, Raeven Ridgell.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being present both here in person and virtually. When I came to the conclusion that we needed to do something to inform our communities and to prepare our communities of what is to come and what Project 2025 is, I was so deeply humbled and honored that we got a space. So shout out to Broadway. Shout out to Reverend Dr. Shonda Nicole Gladden and Miss Chloe. Uh, and I was even more grateful that the panelists that I'm about to bring up said yes to this idea on such short notice. So thank you to you all, and of course to my co-partners in this, TJ, who is in DC, and Tiara, who is with us tonight. Thank you so very much. So it's really important that you guys know that Project 2025 is 900 pages. Okay. The manifesto is very large. So we cannot go through each and every piece of it this evening, but we have some questions and some lyrics to sort of help jog your memory and help you be able to go and educate others. And we'll also provide some really important next steps for you so that you know how to take it and move forward. Before I bring up the panelists, I also want to say the title American Requiem, of course, came from Cowboy Carter, because when I think of hip hop, when I think of Black music, I think of its relevance in pushing not just fun and jamming, but also in having that social conscious at the bottom of it. So as we go through the promises of Project 2025, as we learn about it, there are going to be some hip hop lyrics to help you all sort of remember in the future. So when someone asks you questions, you might be able to quote Jay-Z, you might be able to quote Beyonce, or whoever else we have a part of it. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up the panelists, and when they sit down, they're going to introduce themselves to you all. So first, Dina Martinez. Terrell Parker. Samantha Douglas. And Wild Style Pashaw. Thank each of you for being here.
Hello. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Dina Martinez. I currently serve as the Young Democrats of America Executive Vice President, as well as the Vice President of the Indiana Young Dems. In my official capacity, I am the Global Program Manager at the Indiana Economic Development Corporation here in the state. So I am fully involved in all things economic development, specifically with how our international companies invest in the state of Indiana and how that impacts our communities through the READY program. So really excited to kind of talk about community impact and what Project 2025 means for us.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out on this Friday evening. Appreciate you all for being here. My name is Terrell Parker. I'm a proud Black gay man. I say that and I lead with that in some spaces because that informs the perspective that I speak from, the advocacy and the work that I do. So that's a part of my identity. Currently, I am the COO for IYG, previously known as Indiana Youth Group. We are the nation's oldest, longest serving LGBTQ youth center in the country. I don't know if people know that we have that right here in Indianapolis. And also, we have the largest rapid rehousing program for young people in the state of Indiana. Young people who are experiencing homelessness. We serve all youth ages 12 to 14. So I'm here today specifically to talk about from the perspective of Black queer people and also the impact of Project 2025 on young people as well.
I'm Samantha Douglas. I have a lot of things I do, if I'm being totally honest, but I'm the president of the Far East Side Community Council. It's a resident-founded and led community organization here on the Far East Side of Indianapolis. I'm also the communications director for the Indiana Democrat African American Caucus. I'm also a Hoosier Women Forward grad, a Congressional Black Caucus Institute boot camp grad. So yeah, done a lot of things, have managed campaigns, have worked on campaigns, and I'm excited to use that insight to help us, dive through Project 2025 and talk about how it impacts us.
Hey, I'm Wild Style. I do a whole bunch of different things too. Some of them fairly well. Um, I am a member of the Learning Tree. We're an asset-based community development organization that focuses on knowing our neighbors and knowing the gifts and talents and connecting them with really power and resources. Through that, I'm also chairman of Roots Indianapolis. I am a Indianapolis Foundation community ambassador, a writer and historian at times, and somebody that's, really committed to community organizing and keeping the community informed about what's going on in their world.
Thank you, thank you. So before we get into the questions, I'm going to go through the promises, the first 4 promises of Project 2025, and this is where those lyrics are going to come in handy. So, number 1, for those who write the laws, I'm going to always have smoke for them. Jay-Z. It was created by the Heritage Foundation, right? They are the forefront of it. The second, we don't look nothing like them people on the screen. You know, the movie stars, picture perfect beauty queens. But we got dreams and we got the right to chase them. Look at the nation. That's a crooked smile braces couldn't even straighten. J. Cole. The first formal promise, restore the family as the centerpiece of America. Eliminate phrases like DEI, reproductive rights, and that's stuff like the Supreme Court shutting down affirmative action. It is the anti-CRT bills. It is things that prevent and encourage the exclusion and the separation of people of color and marginalized communities from the forefront. The next one. Why the negative vibes and why do people take bribes? I don't understand it, yo. And why do bad people live and good people die? Somebody got to tell me why. Why do people smoke crack? And why do white fight black? That's Queen Latifah. I can't understand. The second promise, return self-governance. Eliminate the EPA, Departments of Homeland Security, the Department of Education, Department of Justice, the State Department, and remove woke bureaucrats from the government structure. That's actually verbatim, right? I thought, how do we summarize that? Queen Latifah, I just can't understand. Just can't understand. Number 4, when you die over crude oil as black as my boo, Young Jeezy, my president is black, right? The next promise, defend borders, eliminate big tech like TikTok, lean into oil and gas for energy dominance. Right? So you remember how the removal of the EPA. Yeah, right? So think of Young Jeezy when you remember that one. And finally, lay another finger on this big bad wolf Miss Lady rap singer. And I'll be the one to blame as the flames keep rising to the top. That is Left Eye. The final one, secure God-given right to liberties, eliminate progressivism, promote marriage, and Thanksgiving dinners. That's really in there. Someone said gotta eat. But the language tells me that is where a part of where the attack on women and reproductive rights came from. So I thought, lay another finger on this big bad wolf Miss Lady rap singer. And I'll be the one to blame as the flames keep rising. Because we will prevent that or go down with it. So as we talk about the 4 promises and as we think about the elimination of DEI, the emphasis on marriage, specifically between a man and a woman, because that's in the language, to return back the traditional wife, right? That is where the speech from the one football player, I know his name, but he that one football player. That's where all of that comes from. Lean into oil and gas. Imagine what that means in the space of environmental racism, right? Also, consider the fact that they have no problem promoting Thanksgiving dinner but are struggling with teaching about MLK? Think about that in the firmograph of things. So the first question that we have for our panelists are, what are you most concerned about in Project 2025? How does it relate to the community you serve? Dina, you want to start us out?
Yes, so I think for the purposes of this conversation, it's important for me to talk about my background. I am a proud Afro-Latina. My family is from Honduras, and I'm a first-generation American. But I guess according to Donald Trump, I just decided to turn Black. I think that's a really important note, because as I'm online, I was preparing for this, and I kept going through as to how the Black community is talking about Project 2025. And I was on TikTok, and I'm reading the comments, and people my age are very, very engaged with what is happening. And then I went to my Instagram, and I happened to open it up, and the first thing that came up was the Shade Room. And I went to the comments of the Shade Room, and there were a lot of people in our community that were defending Donald Trump and the Heritage Group. And I think that is what scares me about Project 2025. It's the lack of apathy from our community right now, but mostly the lack of education on it. So, I think we need to understand that this 900-page manifesto isn't new. This is a program that was built upon the mandate of leadership, which actually was written in 1981, and it was the background of the Reagan administration, meaning that these policies have been around for a very long time and have been affecting us. And that is the most important note, because then items that we are fighting about and that our people are saying that the Democratic Party doesn't support them on, that means that the Republican Party, the GOP, has been kind of pitching at these things for at least 20, 25 years. And we've seen that because they finally got rid of Roe v. Wade, right? So then that means that all of these things are literally coming up, and if we don't take care of them now, they will literally come to fruition. 64% of the Heritage Foundation policies were passed under Trump's first administration, and that does not include Project 2025. So all of these disgusting rhetoric policies will literally come true if this man comes to power. So just like he was able to erase Madam Vice President's identity in a pitch of a second, they could erase our identity at any moment. And so that is literally what concerns me about this.
Yes, so I second everything that you said, absolutely. And I want to add to that, what scares me is that it could actually happen and that these laws could actually come into place. I had the opportunity to work for an organization called the National Minority AIDS Council in Washington, D.C. for 5 years. So for 5 years, I lived in Washington, D.C. The organization that I worked for, we did a lot of work around how do we reform health policy for minority communities. And that gave me the firsthand access to see what the playbook looks like. So what scares me is the playbook that they have, it works. Because this was their playbook. What does the overturning of Roe v. Wade, whether it's gender care bans, whether it's DEI, they all follow the same playbook and the same strategy. And the strategy is we're going to come up with these frivolous lawsuits. We're going to start in, let's say, a Texas Circuit Court, where it's a really conservative judge that Donald Trump appointed when he blocked Barack Obama from appointing federal judges. This is the playbook. This is the strategy. So we create these frivolous lawsuits in the lower court where normally they would have been thrown out, but now we have all of these really conservative judges there. So what do? They enact these really strict laws. What used to be our defense was what? The Supreme Court. But what happened to the Supreme Court? It's really conservative right now. So
He was able to appoint three
Three
Supreme Court justices. Which
Supreme
is
Court
actually
judges.
The last one that did that was Reagan. Yeah.
Right.
So
And they predict that he could appoint 2 to 3 more in his next presidency. So what happens then? So we don't have any defense at the federal level. We don't have any defense at the Supreme Court level. So their playbook is working. So if they get Donald Trump in office, if they win the House and the Senate, what did you say? It was 64% of their last plan was passed? Guess what happens? Even more is going to happen. And their playbook is working. So what scares me also, and then I'm gonna transition, is that people don't know the actual implications. Like you talk to somebody and they say, don't you think that inflation is high? And don't you think that regulation over energy prices is driving inflation? And most people today, when they look at gas prices that are high, they would say, yeah, I agree with that. So the Heritage Foundation, their answer is, well, let's get rid of the EPA since they control the energy regulations. But what are the real world implications on Black people, our communities? Let's look at Flint. Let's look at Flint. They still don't have clean water. How many hip hop songs have referenced Flint, Michigan? They still don't have clean water. That is Environment Protection Agency's job to make sure that we have clean drinking water, that we can breathe clean air. So what happens if we get rid of the EPA? Our communities are going to be impacted. So what also scares me is that I don't think people understand the real life implications if these laws are passed.
Yes, I agree. And Sam, before you go, I want to remind people, when we talk about environmental racism, when we talk about losing an agency like the EPA, that contributes to increases in asthma. PCOS is even tied to the environment, right? Cancers tied to the environment. And think of New Orleans, think of even Northwest Indiana as the EPA Superfund site, right? Think of the soil, the lead in water, just the things that really will contribute to unconscionable harm. Sam?
yeah, so many things worry me. I wanted to the things that both of you guys said. The Supreme Court also, they don't have term limits. So they have to die or step down.
Yes.
That's why it's so impactful that when somebody names one, they're like in there. So these older ones that have the potential to step down or retire and that Trump could then replace, he can replace them with younger conservatives that could be there a very long time. We're not talking about an impact for the next 5-10 years. We're talking about for several decades. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. And also, Black people and Black property are disproportionately impacted by natural weather occurrences as well. Think Katrina. Think and redlining also put us in neighborhoods on like flood plains and things like that. So when you look at all of these things, environmental things that we think are like high level, like we don't have it to like worry about because that's like tomorrow's problem because we have so many pressing ones today. The fact that all 4 of my Black sons have a touch of asthma is probably completely contributed to the fact that I live on the far east side of Indianapolis. So that matters. Buying $50 inhalers every month, every other month, that matters. And that matters right now, right? So I just wanted to put that out there. But I think what concerns me the most about Project 2025 is dog whistles that we don't recognize. Statements like, returning your power to you. This sounds like a very good thing. Yeah, I should have control and power over my life. Even though if I put you in the EPA like Ben Carson running HUD, right? This is a surgeon, a neurosurgeon running HUD. You're not confused, it's housing, okay? That's the problem. It's not to say he's not intelligent, he's not educated, blah, blah, but not for that, right? And ultimately, there are a lot of complex things that people spend a lot of time learning and experiencing so that we can effectively advocate and work on good policy. Why would we ruin these institutions that we've built time building to then come in and say, no, here, you know what's best for your, and it's like, I don't know if any of you guys have children with disabilities or something, but you just kind of get thrown in a sea of like, I don't know nothing. I need the school's assistance and help to tell me where would these resources best go and stuff. You can't just give me a check and tell me, here, have at it. Like, what? So I that's what I hate, and that's what I worry about, is that they package things in a way that it sounds like a good thing. Like, I think one of them was they're getting rid of Head Start. They're getting rid of Head Start. Because they're like, you should be responsible for your child's early education, not paying attention to the fact that 60-some% of Black children are born to single mothers. So how does she have the capacity to do that, to teach her kid from 0 to 5 years old until they go to kindergarten? That's ridiculous to put that on her when she has a community she can lean on. We have programming in place that's working. Is it perfect? No, but we have something there, and we can continue to build on that. So those are the things that worry me, is they package these things with language and dog whistles that not everybody is educated about or knows, and you think it's a good thing. It's like, yeah, I see a lot of posts about, yeah, run me that $1,200 check, and it's like, y'all, like, I can't even explain to y'all how many times I've had to break down that a stimulus check is to stimulate the economy. They literally gave it to you to spend. They knew you would spend it. Period. That's it. It was nothing more. This was not to benefit you or your life. This was not to make you better. This was to make sure that their pockets stay fat and they continue to grow. Period. That's it. Yeah. So that's what worries me.
I think it's also important to note how you said the elimination of Head Start. Let's look at the elimination of the Department of Education and the interference of this mandate in it, and what that means for communities, what that means for Black and brown people.
There's an act. There's literally an act. It's about people with disabilities in education. It's IDEA is the act. And in there, it requires schools that receive federal funding to give them numbers about Black children and other minorities being disproportionately placed into special education and discipline, right? That is a part of Project 2025. One of the things that they want to remove. They want to remove that. So when that happens, when a school reports a certain amount of numbers of Black children or other children of color being disproportionately impacted negatively, they have to use 15% of those dollars that they get to address those issues. They want to eliminate that.
I don't mean to cut in, but I think it's important to realize that all of these things are already put into work. I don't know if you've noticed over the last couple of days or last couple of weeks, the state of Indiana has been talking about the commission about this new high school curriculum, right? And how it will affect our communities and how it's going to be skills-based. And what is it? It is attack on public education. Yep. And it is literally word for word a playbook right out of the Heritage Foundation. So it doesn't even have to wait until Donald Trump is a president. It is happening now, and it can happen under a Mike Braun governorship. Under clearly Todd Rokita is up there like pushing this type of legislation and these types of policies. So that is highly concerning.
And before I pass it off to the guru, you remember how we said that these things have been happening?
Yep.
I don't, a dog whistle, no child left behind. When was No Child Left Behind? And what did that mean? That meant that there were skills and there were comprehensive educational skills that were bypassed because there was no way of accurately gauging if the children were reaching those milestones.
Yeah, they were just pushing them through. For those who don't know No Child Left Behind, it was just keep pushing them through. Keep pushing them through. Let them be a freshman and have a 3rd grade reading level. Why not? Just keep pushing them. That's what that was.
A direct attack. And then you remember how Tiara said ALEC? Yep. So ALEC is a conduit for bringing these bills to your legislatures across the country. So usually when you see these, the bans, when you see it's the exact same language and it's coming from ALEC most of the time. They're the conduit that brings the legislation word for word to bring it to policy. And it's the same bills in Idaho, Iowa, Texas, Indiana, New York, Florida. So when we say, like, look up the Heritage Foundation, look up ALEC, because you can see a lot of that legislation. Because I think it's really important that if you get time here and out there that you read these bills so you know what it means and how you will be affected, because that's also how they get a lot of stuff through. People are not reading 80-page bills. right? People are not reading zombie laws from 1972 that say that if you talk about abortion online or public advertisement, that you can go to jail, right? There was a state that had something similar. That's Facebook in modern day, right? So consider taking time to go to ALEC, read those things so that you can also be aware. Well, so how does Project 2025 impact you? What is your concern?
So all of their concerns, plus the fact that I know they can get it done.
We're getting it done.
Yeah, they're getting it, but they have a good plan, and well, one of their plans is to replace the civil servants. Now, it's one thing when we have a affordable housing crisis going on right now because we had Ben Carson as the HUD secretary. I mean, seriously, that's why people don't have a place to live, why the rent's so high, why more people are homeless. But that's just Ben Carson. The rest of the hood, those people were, for the most part, allowed to do their work. They couldn't do any radical policy, but they were able to maintain the basic functions of HUD. But these people are smart. That they know that replacing all the civil servants allows a different level of control. Nobody's ever had that type of control to be able to replace all of the small jobs with people that think just like them. And when we talk about the Heritage Foundation, for all my comic book DC fans, they're like the League of Shadows.
Oh.
They've been here a long time. They had their most impact under Reagan, but they were founded under Richard Nixon, because he was too liberal for them. They got 60% of what they told Ronald Reagan to go do. He went and tried to do it out of 2,000 proposals. These people, their proposals were to fund insurgents, terrorists in Afghanistan. Some Osama bin Laden. Some in Angola, Cambodia, the Contras in Nicaragua. This was the Heritage Foundation that came up with these policies. They've been here. They are like the League of Shadows.
Yeah.
Operation Desert Storm, the first Iraq war, that was the Heritage Foundation. And then it's not just the Heritage Foundation involved in Project 2025.
It's not.
There's 100 other partner organizations. There's 100 organizations that all contributed brain power and thought and writing to this.
Yeah.
And only 7 of them are listed as hate extremist groups by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Only 7.
The Project 2025 partners employ 200 former Trump administration officials. 140 people that are listed as writers and editors on Project 2025 worked in the Trump administration. They've been there before. They know
one
how.
that he don't know nothing about.
Right, exactly. Like some key people that are leading it work for him as well. They have a good plan. Like as an organizer and a strategist, they have a very good plan. They have the expertise to get it done. And I think, at this point, I think most of the community kind of understands, Project 2025 is bad, but there's a lot of waffling and conversation and podcast talk about whether, is it, this has been here and this isn't real. Nobody would be dumb enough to say all that. But when you're trying to get policy done, you have to organize. You have a document like this, there's a lot of people that put their money behind it. When they're talking about leaning into fossil fuels, when we know that it's causing us cancer, that's because big oil.
Yep.
The current energy companies that don't want to scale up, don't want to have to create new technology to make us safer, they told them to do this. And it's going to be at our expense. When we talk about them ending the EPA, we don't have to go to Flint.
No.
We can go to Martindale Brightwood.
Okay,
Yes.
now. Not right now.
The evidences of cancer from people that grew up and lived in Martindale, Brightwood are sky high. And the EPA has been in there so many different times to try to go clean that mess up. Imagine if they did nothing after all the civil servants that do this stuff are replaced by people that don't care anything about black people or even the earth itself.
Right.
And so I'm trying to implore people like, this is bad. like I don't have fancy words to describe it, but it is what people are saying. And I am skeptical of both parties at all times, more skeptical of one than the other.
Yeah.
As you should be.
But this is one of those things like, yeah, if we don't do it, your kids will suffer.
Absolutely.
At some point, your kids will suffer.
And I just want to add one thing to that, because you brought up a point that I want to elevate when we talk about what voices are we really listening to.
Oh, yeah.
Because and I'm not going to talk names or anything, but I saw someone who is a very prominent, outspoken person in this community that has a very large following. And they were saying that this is fake. Anybody who believes it is stupid. And you falling for the man or whatever that means. And it just really disappointed me, because I've seen that time after time from people that have platforms that they've created or they've been given, and they're not using them correctly to really give people the correct information. So that's why I want to just really echo again, all of the resources that we're providing here are fact-checked and they're verified. So please take those resources and just be mindful of who you listen to when we talk about this conversation.
It's really important, and that's going to lead me into, that's a segue into the next question. So I realized that I didn't tell you all who I am. That sounds pretentious, excuse me. So I've been in policy work for 13 years now. Since I first came to Indianapolis, I've worked with many of these people, if not their organizations, in more ways than one. And along the way, what I've often told people about is the phrase, the insidiousness of racism. Right? Because when you think of insidious, you think of the horror movie, you think of like the slow creeping, you think of something that's happening, you're scared, but you don't really know which part of it to be afraid of. When I finished my MPA, my thesis was on redlining, and the case study was Cabrini Green. And it shows how the elimination of pretty much many of these agencies, right? The elimination of EPA can contribute to what happened in the environment of Cabrini Green, right? People got sick, people died, right? Because of how the government left them to fend for themselves. When we talk about the Department of Justice, who is going to prosecute these agencies when they are causing you harm? Who is going to have those conversations? People can disagree on whether or not it's a good thing to be or not, but I like to fancy myself somewhat of a constitutionalist. And I have to remind people that the freedom to speak is not necessarily so you can talk crazy to others. It's not necessarily. It's to protect you from your government in the case of holding them accountable. Right? That's literally what it was written for, because they were coming from a monarch that could just lynch people, right? That could just hang people for challenging. So remember these things when you are having the conversation regarding, what do these agencies mean?
Yeah.
How does this happen?
One of the points of having 3 different branches of government is
Yeah.
accountability.
Checks and balances.
Like, so
There's
three. So, and for those, it's our executive, which is basically our president and his whole staff, and then you got
The legislative.
and then you have
The
judicial, which is basically the Supreme Court. It's more than that, but just So a lot of this plan too is shifting an unbalanced amount of power under the president.
It is.
So replacing all of these servants, getting rid of some of these departments, all of that stuff. It's about shifting power to an individual so that he can make more of an impact as an individual. That is dangerous. Like, part of the reason that you can't just come in and replace a whole bunch of people is to help keep a little bit of balance in there. Because regardless, I'm like, whilst I'm critical of both parties, even though I'm a part of the Democrat Party, either extreme would probably be harmful, mainly because it would not reflect most of our people, right? Like, that's and by the way, with Project 2025, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but 2/3 of our country does not agree with this. Mm-hmm. So this does not even reflect a majority view. Like, so that's tough. But yeah, part of not being able to do some of these things is to keep the balance of power, and that's what they want to break up. They want to break up the accountability, break up that balance of power, and really shift it all toward one leader, to use this mandate for leadership.
Yes, and so then that brings us to, there's a documentary called Shiny Happy People. It's actually about the Duggar family. But the underlying tone is the Joshua generation and how they partially use this family to push these views. God bless you. To push these views, right? So how many of you know the Duggars? They were the family that they had a lot of children. They pushed the traditional wife. They pushed homeschooling. They pushed the things that basically practice what they want Project 2025 to look like. And the beauty of that is they put this family in front of America. And most of America, a lot of people were like, oh, it's just a happy family. She stays at home. They cook. They do all of these things. But the insidiousness of it is that they are desanitizing you to the concept before they implicate it, right? They were desanitizing, which brings me to the question, how important is it that those with the mic are fact-checked by their communities? And if there are any people that you prefer to hear from, right? Because we want to share them. Who are they? Like, who are individuals that you like? I know if they say something, it tracks. I trust that. Because while we don't necessarily want to, say other names, we do want to uplift those who are doing the good work. So I'll start. Mine is Native Land Podcast. It's like Native Land. It's Andrew Gillum, Tiffany Cross, Angela Rye. It's just a fun, quick way of talking about what's happening. But I think that's a podcast that kind of needs more love because they talk about everything we talk about. And I'll start with Wild Style on that side.
Oh, man. So I'm going to say that I don't trust anybody to, I'm going to be honest.
I was going to say the same thing. I was going to say the same thing.
I'm going to say that from, like, I'm a historian. I wrote an article called The Ethnic Cleansing of Black Indianapolis. And there are a lot of people that I actually liked, respect, that were historians that didn't quite get the narrative right about what happened to Indiana Avenue in Black Indianapolis. Not because necessarily they had an agenda or whatever. It was just that, they didn't. It's one thing to know the facts, but also to know the context. And so, I would say just be cautious of everything, but ask a bunch of questions, do a whole bunch of research, especially with, again, like some folks in our community that have spoken out against Project 2025, and there's some folks that said you're dumb for believing it. Fact check us all. Fact check me.
Fact check me.
You don't know. I could be taking money on the side. I'm sure some of these people are taking money on the side to say some of this foolishness up here. But just be wary and understand that, and I preach this all the time, that local elections are extremely important. But this is one of the cases that I think that, honestly, I think if, Trump gets in here and they get their way, you don't have to worry much about local elections either anymore, because the local people aren't going to be able to get anything or not much else done with this type of control that they're going to do. And we're talking about, they're going to cut funding to where the city governments, even if you got good people in here, aren't going to be able to do as much. So it will trickle down, and it will trickle down fairly quickly this time. But I mean, I just have to say, like, even last time, Trump's Secretary of State, Jeff Sessions, that Reverend Harrison took to Country Kitchen. By the way, his first week on the job, he said that the Department of Justice isn't going to keep suing these police departments for violating civil rights. Mm-hmm. And what did they do? Well, they went buck wild and shot even more black people. Did even more damage. I mean, especially our local ones. So, you know, because they knew there was no consequences. And so I'm saying, yeah, do your own research, but be careful with that term. I hate that term now because most of the time it gets said by people who didn't actually do their own research. But if anybody's watching this or anybody's watching this and they want to go find somebody that doesn't believe Project 2025 is real, I will debate them anywhere.
So
About this. Like, you bring your facts and I'll bring my facts.
Yeah.
I love it. So I'm going to switch up the questions because you all represent different sectors, and I want to make sure we're hitting on those. Also, for reference, I don't remember the young man's last name, but in Alabama, I believe, there was a young black man who was lynched. He was tied to a tree. Michael something. Jeff Sessions was the one who didn't want to prosecute the case, right? If I'm not mistaken, he swears that was not the case. But he was the one who had the ability to go after the police officers, and he wasn't too keen on going after those, not the police officers, but the gentlemen who, in essence, did it. And remember, there's a documentary out on HBO about it. And that's another documentary on HBO. It follows his mother and her pursuit of the Ku Klux Klan because she sued the Ku Klux Klan and bankrupted them because the men who were found accountable for murdering her son, were members of the Ku Klux Klan. They did it after a Klan meeting. And the concern, if I'm not mistaken, was they didn't like that OJ had gotten off. Right? It was something like that. It was
That makes sense. Yeah.
something in that essence. Basically, their belief was because a black man got away with killing someone white. It might not have been OJ, something like
Probably
that.
was. It was-
That they said they should be able to get away with killing
Sounds right. I remember that.
a black man. And imagine having individuals with the thought to not prosecute them, because that would happen under the Department of Justice. Imagine what would happen if there was no Department of Justice there for George Floyd, for Dre'Jon Reed, for Aaron Bailey, for, now may she rest in power, Sonia Massey, for Freddie Gray, for all of those individuals. Breonna Taylor, the list goes on and on, not having that type of accountability structure. So just imagine that concern. So I want to hit the economic purview of this. And so, Dina, from your perspective, how would, because one of the agencies that is in Project 2025 Mandate for Leadership is like the Office of Budget, is they want to go in there and gut that, right? The presidential office of budget and the Pentagon are on their purview. So from an economic perspective, what do you have to say about that, and how will that impact the people and the communities that look like us?
There are so many repercussions to it. As I mentioned earlier, I work in economic development, specifically in the IEDC, and I think I find it highly fascinating right now. Every time that there's an announcement or there's a ribbon cutting, there is a Republican member of the state of Indiana that shows up. And a lot of these things are happening because of the bipartisan infrastructure bill that the Biden-Harris administration passed. That actually impacts our community. There has been
they were against it.
Yeah, they were against it. They've specifically, Mike Braun voted against it, and yet he shows up. So that is fascinating to me. But maybe I shouldn't say that. I kind of work there. But yeah, like there are so many things that I'm concerned about on economics specifically. I don't think that if we have a new administration that is pushing some of these ideals, we will have any form of the funding that we are receiving now, ever again.
Transportation, buses.
None of it, so none of the things, like, clearly we can see Aaron Freeman fighting against the city of Indianapolis for something as simple as the blue and purple line, right? That includes sidewalks, that includes, like, cleaning up some of our drain systems, right? So that they're not flooded, and so that people like me, because I used to take public transportation, wouldn't get soaked when a car drove by every single day. That means that I wouldn't have had to have taken an hour and a half bus ride from the far east side of Indianapolis to downtown Indy so that I could hop on another bus to IUPUI, right? Every single day. And so that once these policies are put in place, they are cut. And who is affected by it? It's our communities. It's the Black and Brown community. It's the Latino community. We will never have that influx of funding ever again, and that is sad to me. But I think the more I think about it, I think about the public health implications. If you think that the Black maternal mortality is high now, it's going to be a joke in the next couple years. Because those tax cuts are not, the tax cuts that sound so appealing are not for us. They're for a specific level of the population that are going to generate so much more income off of it than we would ever see, because we are just not in the tax bracket that they are kind of alluding to. And then, like, things like student debt relief would never happen again. Sure, you may not see it right now, and that every time that you see an announcement from the Biden-Harris administration, and you're like, well, it didn't hit me. Well, it didn't hit you just yet, and it probably could have been coming, but it won't come anymore. And then, like, they really promised cutting Title I, which provides supplemental financial assistance to school districts with children of low-income families. I was one of them. I mean, I lived in New Orleans for a few years. I also was part of the free and reduced lunch program. That would be cut. And that, I remember my only meal coming from going to school. And that means that our children would not get fed anymore. So yeah, so a lot of those economic policies are really important. So they're not just on the tax cuts, but they go into public health, education, and so much more.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Hold on. For the Indiana state legislator too, how cruel is it, especially to Black women, right, to tell them that not only can I not ensure your life through pregnancy, but I'm also going to make sure that you can't access abortion.
Yeah.
You have to stay pregnant.
You have to.
And bonus, you may make it, you may not. Like, I've had preeclampsia 3 times out of my 4 pregnancies. And that is tough, okay? That is tough. And I can't imagine. And I had consistent health care the entire time, thank God. But I can't imagine if I didn't. I probably wouldn't be here. I'm not going to lie to y'all. 3 times, I probably wouldn't be here. And so that's what I'm saying. How can you tell us, you're not going to give us access, you're not going to give us funding, you're not going to give us access to abortion, and you're not going to invest in our healthcare system to make sure that I can live through it either? It's a special level of cruelty to specifically Black women. I just wanted to say that.
And I think, like, it's important to talk about these things because there's a lot of red herrings when we talk about abortion access. Like, the GOP loves using the term late-term abortion, and I'm simply like, I simply would like to know, like, what does that mean? Because if you give birth, there's not an abortion. So, like, but, like, when we talk about it, like, I don't think that people really put together that it's literally a red herring, and it is to make you angry.
Yes.
And it is to kind of, like, disengage you from the process and to vote for them. And so, yeah, like, it's a public health crisis.
Yeah, they're killing babies. And one more thing, I'm sorry.
I'm so
My
sorry.
last thing, I promise. Fighting for abortion access is not about saying whether abortion is right or wrong. We cannot legislate morality. I'm so sick of it. We can't legislate our religion. We can't legislate any of those things.
Yeah.
Whether I believe that it's right or wrong does not matter. The question is, do I believe that women should have access to that if that's what they choose? And God is pro-choice. Be mad about it, but he is.
Yeah,
I can get up and do whatever I want right now because he gave me the free will to do so. That is choice. So you can be mad about it. And as a matter of fact, there's scripture on that. I said before you, life and death. Choose life. He's saying you have the choice. You have the choice. And so that's all we fight for. It's not about is it right or wrong, because I hear a lot, especially a lot about our black Christians getting caught up on that piece. I don't believe in abortion. That's fine. But do you believe that she should be able to make the choice on whether she does that for herself or not? That's the point. And I had difficult times each time, and I chose life for myself, right? But I don't try to then impose that on everybody else. So,
I think that it's super important to remember that. So I used to work for Planned Parenthood. I was very fortunate to work for the state and then to work nationally across many states. And one of the greatest things I learned is the conversation about bodily autonomy is so much more than abortion access, right? It's health care. It's health care. And if we start legislating who and who doesn't get health care, then we know who is not going to get the health care. And we know who's going to suffer. And we will also know, to tap again economically, is that you force black women to have babies, they can be more likely to be below the poverty line. Right. And so that's something that people don't think about.
Can I make one point? I'm going to be real quick. So on the economic impact, I did want to talk about the real implications of DEI and the economic impact on black people. I mean, I think we all know it. Once again, I'm grounding us in reality. We didn't think the Supreme Court would overturn affirmative action. They did. As a result, DEI programs are getting slashed. What does that do for people who do that work? But what does that also do for funding small businesses, for funding nonprofit organizations? The playbook. We see what they did with the Fearless Fund. There was a fund that supported specifically black women businesses to give them at a level playing field. And what did they do? They created a frivolous lawsuit. They took them to court. And now they're saying that it's illegal for us to create a fund that supports a special initiative or a special group. So now you can't just have a fund that supports black women or a fund that supports Latinx businesses. They're saying that that's illegal. So what's next? Small business loans for black people? I mean, sorry. It's already hard enough to get a loan if you're a small business owner who is a minority. What's going to happen when they continue to slash these things because they say affirmative action is no longer necessary? So that's a real world impact on us. Last point. We got to work together. And to your point, how do they win? They win because they keep us all divided. You said 2/3 of the American public does not agree with Project 2025, but there might be 10% that agree with that little piece, and there might be 10% that agree with that little piece, and 10% that agree with that little piece, so that everybody stay quiet in their corner, and then they're winning because they have a united strategy. So I'm gonna draw one parallel here, and I'm gonna talk about centering LGBTQ folks in this moment as well, because when we think about access to gender affirming care, what happens if you're a young trans person? I know that's a hot topic. A lot of people in the black community don't agree with that. And a lot of people in the black community feel like, well, you're messing with the children. But I just want to draw a parallel. Okay, so what happens now in the state of Indiana if I'm a parent and my child tells me that they don't feel comfortable in their own body, and as a result, they want to take their own life? I can no longer get them the gender-affirming care that they need. If I take them across state lines, what happens? It's a felony. Now, here's where I draw the parallel. What happens with women's reproductive justice? What happens now if you take a pregnant woman across state lines and she wants to get an abortion? It's a felony against her, it's a felony against the driver, it's a felony against the doctor. So let's draw the third parallel. Black people, where did they get it from? Anybody in the audience want to answer that question? What did it used to be illegal for black people to do? It used to be illegal for black people to cross state lines with white people. It used to be illegal for you to take a black person to the polls to vote. the playbook. So what I'm saying is they keep us all divided because they say, black people are historically conservative, so they may disagree with all this, but if we talk about abortion, we may get them on our side. Or if we talk about LGBTQ issues, we may get them on our side. But what they're doing is they're uniting, we're dividing, and they're winning. So my parallel is they're playing the same playbook and they're playing us all against each other, and we got to work together.
That was perfect segue. So my next question was actually going to hit on the fact that in the chapter regarding removing phrases like DEI is also the gender index. It's also reproductive justice or reproductive rights is what they want to remove, like these things. And so when we talk about removing things like the gender index, and when we talk about, so for reference, the American Sexual Education Institute, whatever the acronym is, if I'm not mistaken, says that gender identity is important to how you connect with the rest of the world. So basically what they're saying is if a child is able to see who they are and figure out who they are, then that contributes to whether or not they're cruel in the world, right? If you are able to see who you are and connect with yourself and feel yourself, when we talk about representation, if you are unable to do that, things can get terrible real quick, real swift. And so, Terrell, I want to ask, when we talk about the removal of the gender index, when we talk about these things, what impact do you think that will have on specifically our community? And I want to see if we can relate it to the fact that right now we see more Black trans women murdered than anything.
Absolutely. So the biggest determination of the life expectancy for a transgender person is their access to gender affirming care. And it totally transforms their entire life. It affects their ability to get a job. It affects their ability to navigate in a world where they feel confident and they feel comfortable and they can simply walk out the door. I realized this when I was doing the work with someone, and they said, "Do you realize how hard it is for me to walk out the door every day? For me to walk out the door and not know if somebody's going to call me a man or if somebody's going to enact violence upon me because I'm not passable." And what does it mean to be passable? That means if a person is trans and you don't necessarily know that they've transitioned, you would think that they were born in that gender. So to not be passable is one of the worst things psychologically, in our community, but also for someone's safety. So if people don't have access to gender affirming care, which means they don't have access to hormone replacement therapy, it's not always about changing your physical body or changing your anatomy. If they decide to do that, that's their business. But just the person's ability to walk outside of the door, to get on the bus, that same public transportation that we talked about, and to get to their Black job or their Latinx job or whatever job they're trying to go to, they don't even have that ability. So I think for so many of us who we don't walk that journey and we don't know what that's like, it's really easy to say, well, it's about the children, it's about the children, it's about the children. Well, once upon a time, it was also about the children. I'm gonna draw a parallel again for y'all, right? Once upon a time, it was about the children, and that's why we had segregated schools. Now, I know some people may feel like segregated schools are better for Black communities. We can have that conversation another day. But maybe you disagree that you should be able to swim in the same pool. Once again, once upon a time, the pools were segregated because they didn't want the Black kids to swim with the white kids. So once again, we create these lines, we create these boundaries, and we segregate each other, and we say it's about the kids, but really it's not about the kids a lot of times. It's about our own ignorance as adults. Yes. And we got to move past that.
Thank you. And then I'm going to ask one last question to Sam and open it up to you all. I want you all to remember that each of these individuals do work in their respective areas, and so they get to see the daily impacts of a Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, the Mandate for Leadership. They see it, and one of the greatest tools, I think, is the human-to-human connection. When you are working with an individual and you hear that it's hard for me to go outside, or when you've had preeclampsia and you see someone say, you might die, but I don't care. there is a cruelty to it, but there is a humanity that allows us to serve compassionately. And that's why we definitely wanted to bring everyone together in this capacity. And I like how you said it goes back to the children. Remember, civil rights is a sweater. And if you peel one cord, what happens? It completely unravels. It doesn't matter if it's the green one or the red one or the blue one or the white one or the purple one. The sweater's gonna come apart. And we have to keep that in mind. So from an organizing perspective, Sam, I want you to talk about how organizing effectively can be done in our communities to move against something like a mandate for leadership that's been going on for 50, 60 years.
So I'm going to keep it specifically to the Black community, especially too.
Yes.
For us, because obviously the two-party system is very polarizing. And so I don't want you to even think about those things, if I'm being honest. Don't even worry about that. Vote policy. Actually read it, okay? The reason why they had the balls to put out a 900-page document like this, and I don't know if you guys have seen it printed out, is literally this tall. It's literally this tall. The reason why they did it is because they knew for a fact you weren't gonna read it. They was like, you are not gonna read it. We won't even read these little short bill things. And should it be easier for us to digest? 100%. And that's something that we should work on. On the flip side though, if we really wanna make sure that we're making progress, getting the things that we need and not being hurt by a lot of things that are also tucked in here, we have to start getting into that work. It's hard work. I think that's the first thing I wanna say, is that there is no shortcuts. It is hard work. This is not something that's going to happen next year or this presidency, and maybe not the next one. Like, you have to look at this like we are each playing a role in a very big project that we eventually get the things that we need. But this is all like a piece of it, you know? And so when it comes to organizing against some of these things, one of the first things that you can do is get educated. Start to pour through these things. I am not an expert in none of this. None of it. Okay, this is just lived experience, hearing this stuff, pulling this out, a lot of Googling. You know, you just start to dig. I promise you, you will start to see, hold on, that don't make sense. You hear Head Start and them stopping Head Start. My daughter's in Head Start, you know. It's not as complex as you think. When they say they're gonna cut it, they're gonna cut it. It's not gonna be there. Right. You know what I mean? It's not. And when she says, like, when she talked about like the DEI stuff, they talked about removing that language from every piece of agency regulation, contract, grant regulation, a piece of legislation that exists. Federal rule. This is actually what it says. It's not complex language. It's just a lot of it. Okay. Yeah. So I don't want you to be intimidated by things that are supposed to intimidate you, because they're really not. It's like a all bark, no bite kind of thing, right? As far as understanding what's in there. And then if you have questions, find trusted people in your communities that, you know, you can go to and say, hey, what's your opinion on this? And you don't have to take everything that they say word for word, but it starts you down a track though, where you're starting to understand, oh, okay. So like for me, when I look at Project 2025 and the things they're trying to do, small government. That's defund everything. Small government defund. Period. They're taking away money.
Except for the police.
Except for the police, who they're going to give more money to. Yeah. FYI. But everybody loves that picture of when we talk about equity and equality and stuff, and you notice the people standing on the crates with the fence, right? So they want to take away the crates, but not take away the fence. You see what I mean? That's the defunding part. That's the small government part. Let's pull back resources, but not fix the systemic things that created the inequality or inequity to begin with. That's the problem. It's like right now we're already working with Band-Aid solutions, and they even want to remove those. So this is what we need. We need these kind of platforms to help break these things down. But the most simplest thing you can do if you really want to organize against this stuff, get educated yourself, start talking to other people about it and encourage them to educate themselves as well, and then start moving forward. So here on your tables, we have QR codes for Power to the Polls. It's a Black voter engagement initiative that I started. It's nonpartisan. I literally just want more of us at the polls. I don't care how you vote. I don't care. I have so many young Black men. It breaks my heart every time they say it. They're like, you don't want me to vote because I'm going to vote for Trump. And I'm like, listen, baby. Okay, baby. I hear you. Go vote, though. You know, just for real. Just go vote, though. Start somewhere, because what happens is when they look at that ballot, and they see all of the names that they don't recognize, they're like, Sam, who is this? I've had people send me pictures from inside their booth saying, who should I vote for?
Baby, that's illegal. But.
Who should I vote for? No, but it happens.
It does.
You know what I mean? It happens because they literally, and that's what I'm saying. You push them to go somewhere to stretch themselves a little bit, and they'll start asking questions. And as they start asking questions, that's your spot to start educating and helping them navigate this space. So don't be intimidated by it. Reach out, start somewhere, get registered, and go vote.
Can I say one comment on that? So part of my role as Young Dems EVP is to tell people to vote Democrat. But the thing that I tell people specifically is that do not be afraid to hold your elected officials accountable.
Yep.
If they have made promises to you and your community and they have not delivered, vote them out and vote someone else in.
Yep.
And that is how you will see progress. Something that I fight for, I sit in the state central committee at the Indiana Democratic Party. They're currently in French Lick right now, which I have my own thoughts on. Something that we fight for at Young Dems all the time is that there are a lot of people in Democratic politics that have held positions of power for way too long.
Way too long.
And I love some of these leaders. I truly do. And yet we have lost every election for the last, 20-something years because they keep thinking about how Obama won in 2008.
Yes.
In 2008, I was 11 years old. And I remember going to the polls with my mom, and she let me press a button. That was a long time ago. And there are so many things in the state of Indiana that could be better if our party truly believed in our people and weren't afraid to kind of be bold. And so there are young people like me and a lot of us, Sam is one of us too, that are not afraid to step up to our Democratic Party and push them to be better. And so that
folks don't like me.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all know. They don't. I'm for real. And it's because they make it seem like, if you're a part of our club, everything has to be friendly. No, if you ain't doing what I need you to do, it ain't nothing friendly. You need to go, baby. I mean, I love you, but you gotta go.
You gotta go.
We literally did that in my city council district.
Yeah.
We had a Democrat. I had never seen him. Y'all, we're one of the only active neighborhood organizations on the far east side, okay? His council district was over there, and I had never seen this man except 2 times at the Ursay Y. That's not my district, FYI, okay?
Yeah.
I had never seen him in the community. So when another Democrat came up and said, hey, I want to run for, I was like, yep, let's go. Let's do it. And he got beat. And the incumbent outraised him at least twice over. And it didn't matter because people power. That's the thing. People power can still win.
Just as important.
It can still win. Mm-hmm. Yes, it can still win. So
I think there's beauty in remembering that as Black and brown people, we're not single issue voters. There's complexity behind who we choose and why we do what we do. And you have to remember that you all have a lot of power.
Yes.
I'm going to encourage you to also stay in contact with the Center for Religion, Arts, and Culture. Mm-hmm. Participate in the programs and give to the people, the places, the things that give to you. And that's time, treasure, and talent. Because these things slip through the cracks because there isn't enough power behind the people doing the work sometimes. Yeah. Big money can win if we don't put anything against it.
Right.
And so remember that. Keep that in mind. Remember that it's more than voting. You can support people. You can go to your town halls. You can host a town hall. Invite people to the town hall so that you can have more conversations. Please, 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 please do not let this be the last time you have a conversation regarding this 900-page document. Lord, I said, for real? 900, and you're saying the same thing in all 900 of the pages.
Google is your best friend. Honestly, if you read the foreword, it gives you a pretty good vision of the
does.
whole thing, if I'm being honest. I mean, I think. Go ahead. Last I wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'm saying to organize, we have to, especially young black people. I know I'm jaded by the Democratic Party, and it's like it's easy to say I want to stick it to them and either not vote or vote for Trump or whatever, or do this and that. You can stick it to them better by voting in the primary, first of all.
More facts.
If you come out in May, not in November when when they've had months of voter registration drives, but in May, if you come out in May and you start engaging before May the Democratic candidates that are running to be the main Democrat that you can vote for in November, you can upset. Oh, they'll go crazy. They'll try to stop you. If you come out there and you start having I have to remember we in the church, but if you come out there and act a fool every time, especially about housing or whatever else that's on your mind, you come out there and you start finding where these politicians are, especially the local ones. Go out there and act a fool. Tell me about it so I can come out there with you. Come out there and act a fool, but thinking that voting Trump or not voting at all is going to really change anything. It's not going to change anything in your life. You're going to, no matter who's in there, you're going to have to hold them accountable because they're only going to do the bare minimum.
If you don't.
Yep.
The bare minimum to basically get elected. But politicians, I mean, you have a few of them that are actually there for the right reasons, but most of them are not, and you're going to have to accept that. It is what it is, but citizenship is more than voting, and you have to hold the Democrats accountable because they'll try to get away with everything just like Republicans. So
People are going to be cruel no matter what. I'm sorry to cut you off because I want to make sure we open questions for the audience. People are going to be cruel no matter what. It doesn't matter where you come from, especially if you've never had the lived experience. Are there any questions? There's some online. Oh, yay.
So, the first question. Do I need to turn this on? The first question comes from Ashley V., who says, who can we connect with to be more informed on what's happening politically? I have 4 children. I can't read Project 25, but want to be involved in fighting against it. What should I do? Continue to say, not everyone has a community. Some of us are just trying to get through the day. How can we become more informed and help?
Yeah.
Power to the polls. I'm going to put that link in the
I did drop
YouTube.
your Google
Did you?
link in there.
Oh, good.
I don't
Oh,
know
good.
if YouTube's going to do it, but there is a link there for the Power to the Polls. Okay.
Yes, sign up for Power to the Polls. We'll continue to do voter registration drives and things like that, and events like this, informative things, so that when we actually go to vote, we know what we're voting for. But that's my 2 cents.
I do my best to talk about what's going on my social media in between jokes. But you're gonna get as much as I know, and it's the most accurate information. But keep in mind, I don't run like a political channel. Like I talk about other stuff, and you may disagree with me on some stuff, but I do the best I can with that.
That's
I would say something that's very simple is to talk with the young people in your life. And notice I didn't say talk to, I said talk with the young people in your life. Ask them how they're feeling, ask them what they're concerned about. They're actually really insightful. They'll tell you in plain language what their concerns are. If I move out on my own, am I going to be able to afford to live? Like, am I going to have to live at home forever? Like, these are what the young people are talking about, So that's oftentimes our way to get them involved and to get them engaged. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that we can do. That's simple, especially for us who are parents and we feel like we are balancing everything else in the world. Talk to the young people, with the young people in your life. Their friends, their classmates. Just talk with them.
On my end, so the Indiana Young Democrats, so you can follow them at Indiana Young Dem on both Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and actually TikTok now. We are actually launching our comms channels over the next couple of days to really talk about Project 2025 and what it means to our communities, especially leading up into this election cycle. We have some really great content coming up, really more educational, to kind of break down that 900-page manifesto. I had a 48-hour plane ride, basically, so I had time to read 900 pages, but not everyone does, so I truly empathize with that, and so we are kind of breaking it down like pillar by pillar over the next couple weeks.
I was gonna say Joy Reid did a bit of it too on the readout. So if you guys, is it on MSNBC? I'm pretty sure. Well, okay, so yeah, on her show, The Readout, they did a whole Project 2025 Exposed. So those kind of things, I will say this, typically a lot of those kind of news places are pretty factually accurate. Now, obviously, you're going to have ones that lean real hard, you know, it's going to be twisted a bit. But just fact check, a lot of the really good journalists actually give you exact quotes from Project 2025, which is really nice, so that you know they're not just pulling this out of nowhere. They're showing you the actual quote. So just wanted to put that out there. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, you can also follow me on the Clock app, aka TikTok, Politics the Ray Way, because the presidential Barbie always reports for duty. I want to talk about the inaccessibility behind a 900-page document and how that is inaccessible, especially if you have learning disabilities, especially if you are unable with broadband, like the inaccessibility. Remember, y'all, diversity, equity, and inclusion is more than race and ethnicity. It is persons with disabilities. It is socioeconomic classes. It is educational levels. It is diversity of thought. Right? So remember, it's all of the above. And I get to say that as, I didn't say it, but I'm the YDA, Young Democrats of America, Chair of Diversity and Outreach for the national organization. But the goal is to make these things more accessibility. I don't care where you come from. I just want to make sure that you can have a voice. And so I'm also going to encourage you, when you're talking to the young people, knock on the doors of your neighbors. Be as safe as you possibly can. But check in with your neighbors, y'all. Check in with your neighbors and ask them their concerns, because two people, that's a coalition. Mm-hmm. Right? That's a coalition, and imagine the communities and the individuals that you can reach with just two people, right? So keep that in mind. Are there any other questions? I saw people filling out note cards, and I want to make sure that we do this, ask the questions, but most importantly that I'm going to ask y'all to keep it to 60 seconds each. Less than a minute, I know, right? Tiara, do you mind going around collecting some of the note cards? It's plenty coming online. And it's plenty coming online. And while she's collecting them, can we, we popping. Oh, are we popping, y'all?
Period.
That's what happens. This is why they don't want you to be educated.
These are two easy ones, and then there's a third one that may not be as easy. The first, when is the last day to register to vote for the November election?
October 7th.
And how do you register?
October 7th. October 7th.
And how do you register?
Secretary of State.
IndianaVoters.com.
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 I was going to say sos.in.gov.
IndianaVoters.com and October 7th. The next question that is a little more lengthy. Though Trump has distanced himself from Project 25, has anyone read through his official platform, Agenda 47?
I have.
Also, are there any platform info from Kamala's agenda that the panel knows of? And a follow-up question, how can we and others get involved with your programs locally? That all came from Robert C.
Okay, so what we're going to do, because everybody we can take a piece of the question each. So Sam, I'm going to have you touch really quickly on the former president's platform. Terrell, I'm going to ask you to touch a little bit more about, no, okay. Dina. Okay. I'm going to tap you in on Kamala. And then what was the last question? Because I want to make sure I heard it.
How can we and others get involved
Wild Style. Wild Style, you're going to take that question. You're going to split it with Terrell, because Terrell, you can answer that.
Get involved with what locally?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for us, if you are supporting a queer youth or just a young person in general, as I said, we serve all young people ages 12 to 24. You can contact us, info@iyg.org, or we're just IYG on all social media. That's how you can get us.
And also, there's Bloom Project. There are tons of organizations for young people. You all don't forget that. And then we're going to try our best to drop some links as well.
I'm gonna say hit up Sam about getting involved locally. I'm a community organizer. If you want to get into local policy, I can find you groups that want to do that. But when we're talking about Project 2025 and the voting and all of that, Sam is really the person that you need to talk to. She's got all the connections with the Democratic Party and understands, and I trust her. That's the main thing. So.
Look, okay, y'all gotta trust y'all. What's funny is somebody asking about. So I saw somebody recently, one of our Black women, who was saying, I was reading Trump's platform. It ain't that bad to me. Blah blah blah. So I started dropping a whole bunch of screenshots. And so this is what's funny. I actually had these already, so y'all get to get this. But some of the things that Trump is going to do, and this is from his platform. You can go look it up. You can go to his site. You can go look it up. But he wants to push stop and frisk. Yes. And he actually names it stop and frisk. He wants to push it. He vowed to invest in hiring and retaining police officers and increase their protections from legal liability. So our inability to hold them accountable when they're out here doing wild things. He wants to impose the death penalty for drug dealers. This is their definition of drug dealers. I just want you to, this is not like somebody like super high up. I'm talking about he wants to impose the death
Pablo
penalty.
Escobar.
Right? We're not talking about Escobar. We're talking about, yes, okay. Education-wise, he wants parents to elect school principals. He wants them to elect them themselves. Cut federal funding to schools teaching critical race theory. Ending teacher tenure, creating new credentialing body to only certify teachers who embrace patriotic values. Now, that's one of them things. So basically, if you don't think like me, you're not getting our protection or our funding, period.
So
And that's already happened here.
These are all things, literally, Trump has pledged to appoint 100 U.S. attorneys who would be aligned with his policies and investigate some left-leaning local district attorneys. So using this department, the Justice Department, to attack people that he just wants them to.
And that would be like Ryan Mears. They would go after Ryan Mears because he doesn't prosecute petty marijuana. Seriously.
That is exactly that. There have been numerous bills at the legislature to target that.
Of course, all the same kind of climate change things. Because I will say this. And we talked about this before, but I haven't brought it up yet. But so there's different distinctions. Just because you say conservative doesn't necessarily mean Republican, doesn't necessarily mean moderate, doesn't necessarily mean liberal and Democrat and all this. It just so happens where they align as far as our interests, right? So Trump is a Republican, but he's not really so much of a conservative. He wants to spend a lot of money just in places that we don't want to spend it. So I just keep that in mind as you read some of these things, because he wants to dump a lot of money into things that we don't want to support. And he wants to take away money, which seems like a conservative thing, but it's really not, right, from some of these other institutions that we need.
Dina?
I think the piece I'm tackling is
Excuse me, Madam Vice President.
Madam Vice President. I refer to her as KDH, but her agenda. So, as many of you know, she literally just won the official nomination a couple hours ago. And so the official platform will be released upon the announcement of the Vice President nominee, or the pick, which I believe is happening by Tuesday.
Yes, because you have until August 7th.
But from the insider route, what I am understanding is they're maintaining a lot of the Biden-Harris administration policies. She is going to be much, much more liberal in her approach. President Biden was very much more of a moderate. He had so many years of experience, so he really wanted to work with the other side. That is to his credit and to his thing. But like, she is very much more of a person that she's listening to a lot of our concerns. So a lot of the platform will be revamped. I'm just very interested to see what it looks like over the next couple days. And a lot of our organizations will take a deep dive and kind of hopefully educate, provide more town halls on it as well.
And I think it's safe to say that in that platform, we're probably going to see them revisiting the classification of marijuana.
Yes.
And the criminal vacations that come, the prosecutions that came along with it. And so
I would be shocked if it was extremely different from
Yeah, I would be too.
Biden-Harris. It's not because of the balance that you need to keep in our country, right? Even though she's more liberal, I highly doubt she's going to go that deep as far as her platform. If I'm being honest, she still needs, certain groups to vote for her. And that involves making sure that your platform reflects enough people. And so I doubt she's going to go real far from it.
Oh yeah, I personally would like her to maintain about 80%, and add some 20% more liberal in there, but we'll see what it is. Yeah.
we'll see. But remember, when you I think the beauty of having a black woman from Oakland might mean, you remember we talked about that lived experience, might mean that she sees things in a different way. So I think that's what you're going to see. I hope that's what you will see. Remember, we want you to be hypercritical of everybody. That's why people want to remove educational standards, because that's how you build critical thinking analysis. Be hypercritical of everything, but also remember that lived experience is deeply important. Are there any other questions online or in the audience? Yeah, go ahead.
Ashley V asked again, what about what he's saying with us needing not to vote anymore once he's in office?
So, yeah, you know what?
I think that's one of the things that's pretty self-explanatory. I think if you look at January 6th, what happened, his role he played in it, and everything else, I think he's sometimes he tells the truth, and I think he's I think he's telling the truth that this might be the last election. If he gets in, and I think, with the Project 2025 people and the partners and everything else, if they implement a lot of this stuff, they would have to end elections because people would vote them out the next time.
Immediately.
So I don't think he's lying about that.
Yeah.
And then there's a final question, I believe. It's to Terrell directly. There's some preface here. I've had people ask me, why should the LGBTQ issues matter? Someone asked, why should this matter? Because they treat everyone equally. I tried to explain it to them, but I need more help.
I would use really the example that I said earlier about what are all of the parallels that exist among our experiences, and you can't separate the LGBTQ people from that experience. And I don't know, it's a famous, you're my historian, what is that famous thing that they said about the Holocaust? They came for this group. You know about, I don't know it verbatim.
They came for they came for one group and I was silent. They came for the other and I hid. They came for me and there was no one around.
Right. And I think that really underscores the challenge. They're coming for all of us. And it's real easy to hide when it's not you. But what's going to happen when they tap on your shoulder and it is your time? So for that reason, I think we have to make sure that we include everyone in this movement who is impacted by it.
And remember, Black people and brown people are also members of the LGBTQIA plus
Absolutely.
community. So things gonna be a whole lot different if you show up and your cousin not there.
Right.
Right? So keep that in mind, that it's intersectionality at its core. One last thing before I put us on the track to wrap up. I want to say this as facts. In the former president's plan, there is the aspect to militarize police. That's a part of the mandate to militarize police. Y'all, keep in mind, defund the police never happened.
Never.
Police forces
Never
across
happened.
the nation saw an increase in budget. A lot of that was directly related to their state legislatures and their local government institutions that expanded and in some cases flooded those budgets. And because of that, we saw the highest number of police related shootings in 2023, right? It was 2022 or 2023. We saw the most ever in American history, right? And so consider that when people say these things, they were never defunded. Like, we talk about militarized police. We saw what happened in Ferguson. We saw what happened here. We saw what happened across the nation and how the militarization of a law enforcement agency is knocking on our doors. It means they're at our functions. They're hyper policing our events at the convention center. And so keep that in mind, you all.
I think one of the pieces with that, though, this is where advocacy becomes so important because, so for here, for example, their budget increased, but it was to accommodate body-worn cameras, specifically ones that automatically activate when their gun is pulled, when they're in a certain amount of feet of, incident happening, things like that. I know there's one right now about getting dash cams because people are asking like, because some angles are weird and stuff because it's right here in their chest. So dash cams, things like that. So this is where it's a thing of like yelling from the outside is one thing, but having people to advocate from the inside so that to say, okay, if you are so pressed about giving them this money, we want it to go here. And we actually did that here. We made sure that happened. Yeah, and one of the biggest parts of the budget, believe it or not, was not the cameras. It was actually the storage of all this dang footage. So it just costs a lot of money. So I want to put that out there too, that like as we're doing these things, there are other ways that we still get wins. Yeah. So just FYI.
Policy is so complex, it's so beautiful, but that's why it's important to have people advocating you. I've referenced the historic House Enforced Act 1006, which is where we started to do a lot of criminal justice reform, and that was led by the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus, as well as many community organizers and organizations came to the table to build a comprehensive policy, and it took 10 months from start to finish. Right, so that's me also saying it's a marathon, right? It goes beyond a month, it goes beyond this election, it goes into it. So we talked about ways to get involved locally. Keep in mind, if Project 25 had its way, there would be no NAACP, right? Right, an institution, there.
How could you?
Just imagine the havoc that can be wreaked. I want to also encourage you all, I know it sounds so cheesy, but y'all reacquaint yourselves on Disney Plus with Schoolhouse Rock.
Please.
Yeah.
Please.
Because I think that breaks down a lot of how these things come to fruition. And it gives you tips on how you can insert yourself in the process as well. And it's not overly complex. It's just, I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill, right? The process is the same across the board for our legislative process. So reacquaint yourself with those if you can, or acquaint yourselves, sing the song, whatever you would like. I'm really grateful. Tiara, can I have you come up on the stage? Really grateful that you all joined us for this evening. If you have any further questions, comments, or concerns, you can follow, and I'm going to have you all give your social media handles so that people can go directly to the source as well to ask more questions, or when you get home and you're in the shower, you're like, dang, I didn't ask Terrell this. That's your, get out the shower first, but then send that DM or that email or whichever is best for you all. So can you all go through your social medias and I'm going to swap it out to Tiara?
Yeah, so I think all of my social media is at Dina Christine, DYNA, middle name Kristine. And then you'll see my pictures. So that's where you can find me.
Yep. And all of my social media is my first name, Terrell, Terrell, last name Parker, Parkerceo.
I'm an old lady, so my primary accounts are Facebook and Instagram. And it's going to be my name on Facebook, and I'm pretty sure it's at LHL Sam, so LHLSAM. And then on Instagram, it's at LHL_Sam.
So I'm heavy on Facebook and Threads. I got booted off of Twitter after a decade and like a 10,000 follower account. But you can find me Wild Style Pichelle on Facebook and Wild Style the producer on Threads and Instagram.
And I am Politics the Rayway on TikTok. Taylor, oh Lord, I don't know my Instagram, forgive me. Raeven Ridgell on Facebook. And before I pass it off, remember, for those who make the laws, I'm always have smoke for them. We don't look nothing like them people on them screens. Why the negative vibes? I just don't understand. When you die over crude oil as black as boo, and lay another finger on this big bad wolf, Miss Lady Rap Singer, as well as a man on the end of Cowboy Carter. Their beautiful statues were made of stone, but they were all lies.
Thank you, Raeven and panelists. As we conclude tonight, I would like to bring your attention to the project2025.org website. Terrell mentioned the playbook often tonight. The playbook is the mandate for leadership. They also have their actual playbook, which is a 180-day plan, which is a 6-month timeline for essentially overturning the government and putting America on its head. It is to usher out the current administration and to bring in all of those appointed people that are in alignment with the project. Once you get on the website, you will click the menu. You will see their policy. You click the link to their policy. You can start to read through some of their ideals. It will also direct you to their document, the Mandate for Leadership. Personnel, they are actively recruiting people to sign up for their database. This is so that should Trump win, everyone in the database is who they'll rely on to be appointed to these positions. They are recruiting their people now. Training, they will bring you to DC, to all of their training grounds, and everybody that's in this database, everybody that wants to get connected to that administration and to this project, they're bringing you out so that you will know and be ready to do what you need to do in that first 180 days when you are called on to fill all of these roles that the civil servants will no longer have once that administration is in place. So it's very important to get on this website and to read through the things. You don't even have to download the book, which it is accessible via PDF because a physical book is sold out. But just click through the pages and see what they're saying. Once you get on the page, immediately on the website, landing page, building now, today, for a conservative victory through policy, personnel, and training. They are mobilizing and organizing now. This is why it's important to have this conversation. This is why it's important to do your research. So again, thank you, Raeven, our lovely moderator, and the thought leader around this entire evening. Thank you to Dina, Terrell, Samantha, and Wildstyle. And thank you to Broadway United Methodist Church for allowing us to take space tonight to bring this topic to you. Good night.